Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today is July 18th. The Blue Jays are in first in the AL East. Plenty of things to go over because I'm back. Let's do it. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. This is the middle of the order. How are we doing today, ladies and gentlemen? Boy, is it good to be back. I'm happy to be sitting back in my comfy chair in my office here, ready to get going and get into the middle of the order. I'm happy to announce the return. It's been 4 episodes that we've technically missed. A lot's gone on in those 2 weeks that I have not been around, been on my vacation, having a great time. Sad to be away from it, but glad to be back and talking baseball, because it's kind of weird being on the other side of the world, really, and watching baseball games at midnight and 1 a.m. and the All-Star games and all this stuff. It's been a crazy time, but I'm happy to be back here and happy to have baseball on my usual hours in the evenings here. Today's obviously going to be a very different episode than usual. I've gone sifted through, grabbed some of the most important newses that I've missed. We'll be talking about some of that. Obviously, the All-Star game just happened over this past week, so we'll be going over that. And definitely just a weird kind of recap and things that we're going to be working on here. So it's going to be a different episode. It's going to be a one-off episode. Everything will be back to normal come Monday, essentially. Minus 1 or 2 other tweaks here, but we're going to kind of sift into our stuff. Obviously, a lot was missed and a lot of stuff didn't go through. If you check the description, you'll see, if you're on YouTube, you'll see all the things that I'm planning on talking about today in this episode. So if there's things you're looking for specifically, you can jump to that stuff. Obviously, some of this is, pretty old news, so just kind of mentioning it for the big stuff here for, when I look back at this, in many years from now, being like, oh, I remember that time period in 2025 and blah, 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 blah. So with that being said, it's going to be a long episode. It's going to be a different episode. I hope you're excited for it. I hope, it goes well. I'm excited for it. So with that being said, we don't have a series recap. We have 4 series recaps. I've done a little fun way of doing things here. So we'll stick in here. Of course, I'll be missing some of the big things, guys who got called up and certain outstanding performances, all that stuff. It's going to be different. I've made it work to what I'm happy with. And as long as I'm happy, that's what matters. But I appreciate you for sticking into this video. And if you're going to be here, thank you very much. Appreciate you a lot. So with that being said, let's get into our mega series recap. Leading us off, we have the Blue Jays, who started the month hot. 4-0 sweep against the Yankees. They followed that by a 3-0 sweep against the Angels. Took 2 of 1 from the White Sox, but then dropped the last series 1-2 against the A's. They finished 10-3. The Boston Red Sox, on the other hand, were the best team while I was away, 2-1 versus the Reds, before going on a current 10-game winning streak, 3-0 against the Nats, 3-0 against the Rockies, and a 4-game sweep versus the Rays. They were 12-1. How about that? The Rays were on the opposite end, 1-2 against the A's, 1-2 against the Twins, 1-2 against the Tigers, and then the 0-4 against the Red Sox. They finished 3-10. Yikes there. The Yankees started off with a 4-game losing sweep against the Blue Jays. They lost 4 straight there before losing 1 of 2 to the Mets. They dropped that series there. They sweep the Mariners 3-0 there, and then lose 2 of 3 against the Cubs. They finished 5-8. Baltimore, on the other hand, were a little bit better. 1-2 against the Rangers, a 3-game sweep over the Braves, 2-1 against the Mets, and then finished it 1-2 against the Marlins to finish 7-5 while I was away. The AL Central leading Tigers were 6-6, 1-2 against the Nationals, a 3-game sweep against the Guardians, 2-1 over the Rays, and then 0-3 against the Mariners. Not fun there. The Royals were 8-5. They split a 4-game set against the Mariners, 2 apiece there, before taking 2 of 3 against Diamondbacks, and then a 3-game sweep over the Pirates. They did drop their final series though, 1-2 against the Mets. Again, 8-5 for KC. The Guardians were struggling. They ended up though 6-7. They were 0-3 against the Cubs, 0-3 against the Tigers before getting a 3-0 sweep over the Astros, and then taking 3-1 from the White Sox in a 4-game series. 3-1, 3-4 against the White Sox there. The Twins 1-2 against the Marlins before taking 2 out of 3 against the Rays, Cubs, and Pirates. They finished 7-5 during this 2-week stretch here. The White Sox got swept by the Dodgers, 0-3 against them. They took 2 of 3 against the Rockies before dropping 2 of 3 against the Jays and then dropping 3 of 4 against the Guardians. They finished 4-9 in this stretch. The Astros were 6-6. They took 2 of 3 against the Rockies, a 3-game sweep against the Dodgers before getting swept by the Guardians, and then dropping 2 of 3 against the Rangers. The Angels took 2 of 3 from the Braves. They got swept in a 3-game series by the Blue Jays, split a 4-game series against the Rangers, and then took 2 of 3 against the Diamondbacks. 6-7 there for the Halos. The Mariners split a 4-game series versus the Royals, swept the Pirates, they got swept by the Yankees, and then swept the Tigers. So 3 straight sweeps there, 1 they lost. 8-5 for Seattle. The Rangers, on the other hand, they were took 2 of 3 from Baltimore, dropped 2 of 3 against the Padres before splitting the 4-game set versus the Halos, and then finished it by taking 2 of 3 against the Astros, finishing 7-6 in the 2-week stretch here. And in the A's, they took 2 of 3 from the Rays, dropped 2 of 3 from the Giants, took 2 of 3 from the Braves, and then took 2 of 3 from the Blue Jays. Pretty good stuff there as they finished 7-5 to wrap up the AL half of this thing. The Mets now, on the other hand, they took 2 of 3 against the Brewers, 2 of 3 against the Yankees, dropped 2 of 3 against Baltimore, and then took 2 of 3 against the Royals. They finished 7-5 in the stretch as well. Phillies won 2 3-game series against the Padres and Reds, and then lost 2 of 3-game series versus the Giants and Padres again. They finished 6-6 in the stretch while I was away. The Braves, on the other hand, were faltering bad. They dropped 2 of 3 against the Halos. They got swept by Baltimore, dropped 2 of 3 from the A's, and then got 2 of 3 against the Cardinals. They finished 4-8, but lost some ground here. The Nationals were 1 game worse, essentially. 2 of 3 against the Tigers, started off strong, but they got swept by the Red Sox, dropped 2 of 3 from the Cardinals, and then got swept by the Brewers. They finished 3-9. The Marlins were the hot team in the East here for the NL side. 2 of 3 against the Twins, dropped a series against the Brewers, dropped 2 of 3 there, then split a 4-game series against the Reds, and then took 2 of 3 from Baltimore. They finished 7-6 in the 2 weeks here. The Cubs, of course, a good team. They played good. They swept the Guardians, took 2 of 3 from the Cardinals, dropped 2 of 3 against the Twins, but then took 2 of 3 from the Yankees. They finished 8-4. Good stretch for them. The Brewers, though, 1 game better. They started off by dropping 2 of 3 from the Mets, but then they took 2 of 3 from the Marlins, swept the Dodgers, surprisingly, and then swept the Nationals. So a big stretch for the Brewers there to end the first half of the season. 9-3 in their stretch there. Cardinals got swept by the Pirates, which you don't want to do. Dropped 2 of 3 from the Cubs, 2 of 1 against the Nas. They took 2 of 3, against the Nationals, and then dropped 2 of 3 against the Braves. They finished 4-8. Not fun there. The Reds dropped 2 of 3 against the Red Sox, and then dropped 2 of 3 against the Phillies. They split the 4-game set versus the Marlins before winning 2 of 3 against the Rockies. They finished 6-7 in the stretch. The Pirates started off great with a 3-game sweep over the Cardinals, but then got swept by the Mariners, then got swept by the Royals before dropping 2 of 3 against the Twins. They finished 4-8 while I was away. And then lastly here, the NL West, the Dodgers, they swept the White Sox, but then they went on a little bit of a bender. 0-3 against the Astros, got swept at home. 0-3 against the Brewers before taking 2 of 3 against the Giants, but they were playing some sloppy baseball to end the first half here. They finished 5-7, which is, for the Dodgers, not good. The Padres, though, took advantage of this. They dropped the first series against the Phillies, 2 of 3 there, but they then took 2 of 3 against the Rangers. They split a 4-game series versus the Diamondbacks, and then took 2 of 3 back from the Phillies. They finished 7-6. The Giants also finished 7-6. They split a 4-game series versus the D-backs. They took 2 of 3 from the A's, 2 of 3 from the Phillies before dropping 2 of 3 from the Dodgers. Again, 7-6 there. The Rockies, they were bad. Won a game against the Astros but lost the other 2. Won a game versus the White Sox but lost the other 2. Got swept by the Red Sox and then won a game against the Reds but then lost the other 2. They finished 3-9. And then lastly, the Arizona Diamondbacks, they split a 4-game series versus the Giants. They dropped 2 of 3 against the Royals. They then split a 4-game series against the Padres before dropping another 2 of 3 against the Halos. They finished 6-8 in this stretch. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Mega Series recap. Alrighty, now we've got lots to talk about, so let's get going here. Let's talk about the All-Star games here, the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game. In the Derby, they had a new kind of format. Everything always changes with them. They don't have the swing-offs anymore, which kind of sucked in this case because in the first round, all 8 hitters went. James Wood hit 16, Matt Olson hit 15, Jazz only hit 3, kind of the worst display of a Home Run Derby I've ever seen. And then Brent Rooker hit 17. They were all out in the first round, but Rooker missed out on the semis by inches as Cal Raleigh also had 17, but instead of doing a swing off, they did by the longest home run, and his longest home run was about just under an inch longer than Brent Rooker's, so Raleigh moved on. Rooker did not. He had some words. It was a little weird. A swing off would have been better. Regardless, in the semis, it was O'Neal Cruz versus Cal Raleigh. Cruz hit 21 in the first round to Raleigh's 17. And then Buxton, who hit 20 in the first round, versus Junior Caminero, who hit 21 in the first round. So Cruz in the 1 seed, he had the further home run. He won 513 feet, the longest home run in the Derby. But only hit 13 in the second round. Cal Raleigh hit 19 to move on. And then on the other end, Buxton hit 7. Caminero got one more, hit 8, and moved on. So our finals was between Cal Raleigh, the big dumper, and Junior Caminero. Raleigh put up an 18 spot. Caminero could only get to 15, so the big dumper, Cal Raleigh, was your 2025 Home Run Derby champion. And it makes sense considering he finished the first half with 38 home runs. He's on a crazy pace right now for this season. Already has a career high in home runs. What Raleigh's done this year has been absolutely historic and threw around a Home Run Derby champion chain to continue that. For the actual All-Star game, the NL was up 6 in this one. Alonso had a 3-run shot. Carroll had a solo shot. They were cruising. In the 7th, Brent Rooker cut the lead in half. He hit a 3-run homer to bring it to 6-3. The AL then scored 2 in the 9th. That would tie the game up. So we went to extras, but instead of actual extras, this is when we had the swing off. The AL sent up Rooker, Arozarena, and Jonathan Aranda, while the NL brought up Kyle Stowers, Kyle Schwarber, and Pete Alonso. Rooker hit 2 home runs. Stowers followed up by 1. Arozarena then hit 1 before Schwarber went 3 for 3, hit 3 home runs to put the NL up 4-3. Arana came out, went 0 for 3, so Alonso didn't even need to compete. That did it. That was your game. The NL beat the AL 7-6 in extras / swing off. And of course, Kyle Schwarber was your MVP of the All-Star game break there. So that was the All-Star stuff. We'll talk about it a little bit more here, but let's talk about some of the baseball news. As I mentioned, lots to talk about. Let's start off at the beginning of the month here and talk about the big series that kind of started. I was like, oh, I'm so upset I can't talk about this. The Blue Jays and the Yankees had a 4-game series that was part of Canada Day. It was a huge 4-game series because the Jays were going into this series down 3 games against the Yankees. They could have finished this series down 7 games, down 5 games, still at 3 games, down a game, or ended up a game ahead if they were able to sweep. And that's exactly what they did. They had a huge 4-game series sweep. They were 3 games back. They were now 1 game ahead. Took over sole AL East first place. The Yankees have had sole possession of the AL East from April 14th. Pretty much, 3 weeks into the season. The Blue Jays have now taken over first place, and it didn't end there because they then swept the Angels while the Yankees lost 2 against the Mets before winning that last game. So the Jays were on a 7-game winning streak while the Yankees were on a 6-game losing streak. So in the first week of July, the Jays went from 3 games back to 3 games up and made up 6 games against the Yankees. Super impressive. George Springer was a staple in that series against the Yankees and in the week. He went 3 for 4 on Canada Day with 2 home runs, including a grand slam, 7 RBIs. He also had 2 homers on the final game of that series. That put the Jays into first place in the AL East. But on the week as a whole, Springer was 12 for 28 with 5 home runs and 13 RBIs. It was a huge turnaround for the Blue Jays, and it's a big staple right now, in my mind, for the AL East division. Right now, the Jays are up 2 games, but we'll be mentioning that a little bit more here. So that was kind of the big thing for me here. Throughout my absence, we had a numerous amount of long, win streaks, losing streaks, things like that to go over here. So the Blue Jays had a 10-game winning streak at the time. After that 7, back-to-back sweep, they were able to get it up to 10 before losing to the White Sox. What's funny enough right now is the Red Sox are currently on a 10-game winning streak. We mentioned how they were the best team. If you go through all the records from that mega series recap I did, the 2 best teams and the worst team are all in the AL East. The Rays were 3-10 in this stretch and were the worst team in those 2 weeks, while the Red Sox were 12-1 and were the best team. Blue Jays 10-3 were the second best team. So that's currently where we're at right now. The Red Sox on a 10-game winning streak. They have climbed to 3rd place in the AL East, but they are chasing the Yankees. It's a game difference. The Yankees are 53-43, while the Red Sox are 53-45. They've played 2 extra games and have lost those 2 games. And then the Blue Jays, of course, 2 games above the Yankees there. So Blue Jays, Yankees, and Red Sox, that top 3 there, separated by just 3 games. Boston looking to extend their 10-game winning streak with a win today against the Cubs. Some other game winning streaks going on. The Brewers are currently on a 7-game winning streak. They've ended their first half really hot. They are 1 game back of the Cubs. They want it bad. They can smell it. Currently on that 7-game winning streak. They have to play the Dodgers, though. They did sweep the Dodgers just before the first half ended, so they're feeling good, but now they're going to LA to play the Dodgers. We'll see if the Dodgers have some revenge there. Some other streaky stuff. The Dodgers were on a 7-game losing streak. They swept the White Sox, but then got swept by the Astros, followed by a sweep of the Brewers, and then lost that first game against the Giants before winning the next 2. But a 7-game losing streak for the Dodgers, is a talking point. It is something that doesn't happen a lot. They did lose a little bit of ground in the NL West, but still have about a 5-6 game lead over the Padres and Giants. So nothing to fret just yet, but it is, hey, they could be beaten, and that's kind of the big key thing there. And then another team that definitely could have been beaten was the Cleveland Guardians. They lost a lot of ground, and I mean a lot of it. They ended up on a 10-game losing streak. So the Jays and Red Sox were winning 10. The Guardians out here losing 10. They went from 2nd in the Central to 4th, falling behind the Twins and the Royals and the Tigers, who are, still looking as the first team to win 60 games. They're at 59 wins. Could reach 60 with a win today against the Texas Rangers. That's the biggest gap here. And we'll obviously talk about that a little bit later here, but those were some streaky teams that happened here, and we'll see what else we've got cooking here in the episode. I want to mention the All-Star starters. We were talking about all the voting and who was winning this and that. Obviously, the All-Star doesn't matter. I'm not going over all of the All-Stars, but the ones that we had that were supposed to be the starters in the NL was Ohtani, Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Ketel Marte, Manny Machado, Francisco Lindor, Ronald Acuna Jr., Pete Crow Armstrong, and Kyle Tucker. Those were the 9 that ended up winning the votes. And then on the AL side, you had Ryan O'Hearn, Cal Raleigh, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Gleyber Torres, Jose Ramirez, Jacob Wilson, Aaron Judge, Riley Green, and Javier Baez. Those were the 9 that won it on the AL. Of course, some players were dropping, declining. Some players were added, blah, blah, blah. The pitchers and the reserves all get announced. Not doing all of that. We saw who played. We saw who was there. We saw the controversial stuff. But wanted to mention the 18 that got voted in to start the All-Star game. So good for those guys. Moving on here, let's talk about some milestone moments. We had a couple of big ones happen here. One of them being Manny Machado getting his 2,000th career hit. Of course, he's been in the league for some time now. Of course, brought up with Baltimore a year and a half a bit in LA Dodger blue before heading over to where he's been with the Padres. He's been kind of a staple there for the last couple of years, and he's become kind of that leader, veteran aspect approach. I prefer Manny Machado as a Padre much more than I did as a Baltimore O. I did not like him at all, but still 2,000 hits is a good amount of hits, so congrats to Manny Machado. Aaron Judge hit his 350th career home run. He's the fastest player ever, I believe, to reach 350 career home runs. It's quite the milestone. It's the 7th time in Yankees history that a player has gotten over the 350 mark here. But Judge is not stopping anytime soon. It seems like this guy crushes balls, and it'll be, 2 or 3 years before he's at 500 home runs. So he's on a historic pace there. Good for Judge. But the big milestone that I ended up missing here was Clayton Kershaw. He struck out 3,000 batters. He hit that mark in his career. An incredible milestone for Clayton Kershaw and those in attendance to see him reach that milestone. He became the 4th left-handed pitcher to get to that milestone, joining the list of Steve Carlton, CC Sabathia, and Randy Johnson. So Clayton Kershaw becomes the 4th left-handed pitcher to reach that milestone. Those are the 3 big milestones and, of course, historic moments here for Kershaw, Machado, and Judge. So congrats to all of those guys in their milestone moments here. And we'll continue on here by talking about the Luis L. Ortiz situation. He got placed on the restricted leave, I believe, on the 3rd or 4th of July for 2 pitches specifically, one on June 15th and one on June 27th. Those 2 pitches were flagged by a betting integrity firm because apparently there were some large quantity bets that were placed on specific pitches, and the 2 specific pitches that those bets were placed on were not even close to the strike zone. They were pitches that were spiked into the dirt, just, a little suspicious. So yeah, that's obviously something to kind of keep an eye out for here. Well, MLB is investigating the connections here, and if there is anything warrant here. Apparently, I lost my train of thought. The original suspension and the original kind of like, okay, we're gonna put you on here, that was supposed to be done today on the Friday here after the first half was finished here. But I believe, I haven't seen anything besides an article by Cleveland.com that the suspension and the investigation will be going on a little bit further now. It's going to continue past today. So he is still on that list of, ineligible to pitch, and he won't be pitching right now. So there are 2 specific sliders. Yeah, I have it right here. The first slider was on June 15th to Seattle's Randy Arozarena to start the 2nd inning. It was a ball in the dirt that led to a walk. The second slider was on June 27th against the Cardinals. Ortiz started the 3rd inning against Pedro Pajes with a slider in the dirt that bounced all the way to the backstop. So yeah, some interesting stuff there. We'll have to see if it comes to anything, but Right now, he's under investigation and is not going to be pitching with the Guardians again. Should have ended today, but it is still ongoing, so that means there could be some merit behind this allegation and behind this, thing. So we'll keep an eye on that as it continues here. But that is all the news we have for now there. A couple of players ended up calling it a career here. Kevin Pillar and Kyle Gibson both officially announced their retirements. Kyle Gibson, one-time All-Star, spent years in Minnesota, in Philly, in Baltimore, in Texas, and the Cardinals here. So 5 teams. Spent 7 with the Twins. That was kind of his mainstay, debuting in 2013. His All-Star year came in 2021 when he was with Texas. He was 6-3 with a 2.87 ERA. He was then traded to the Phillies that year to help them in their push, but that's where he fell off once again. 4-6, a 5.09 ERA in that time total. So in his 13-year career, he accumulated 14.3 WAR, was 112 and 111, just one game over 500 there. He had a 4.6 ERA. He pitched in 334 games, making 328 starts, pitched 1,878 innings, where he struck out 1,520 batters. So good for Kyle Gibson to call it a career, but the guy who I'm more fond about, who I have more memories with calling it a career, Kevin Pillar. I mean, this guy was a guy. I love watching Kevin Pillar. I think he's such a fantastic player. Amazing with Toronto, his amazing defensive catches. That's where he really shined as a player. Finished with 16.1 WAR, had just over 1,000 hits, had 114 home runs. 111 stolen bases, a career OPS of 697. Debuting in 2013 with Toronto, spent 7 years with the Jays where he accumulated 14 WAR. So, I mean, his career WAR of 16.1, he got 14 of it with the Blue Jays in his first 7 years and ended up just getting 2.2 or 2.1 with the other teams. So 7 years with the Jays, and then the rest spent bouncing around. A year with the Giants, a year with the Mets, a year with the Angels, a year with the Braves, a year with the Red Sox, a year with the Rockies, a year with the Rangers, a year with the White Sox, and a year with the Dodgers. And I say year, basically half years. Most of the time he's been traded. In 2019, he got traded for the first time from the Jays to the Giants. Signed a year deal with Boston where he was traded to the Rockies. That was during the COVID season in 2020. Spent a year with the Mets in 2021. In 2022 was with the Dodgers. Only played 4 games though. 2023 he was with the Braves. 2024 started with the White Sox, got traded to the Angels, and then this year started with the Rangers. Was with the Angels last year in 2024. Played 100 games between the Angels and White Sox that year, and then in 2021 played 124 games with the Mets. But of course, he will be remembered for his time with the Blue Jays. That's where his career really shined in that 7-year frame. 14 career WAR, had what was 55 home runs, 231 RBIs, a 692 OPS, but of course, known for his defense. This guy made absolutely amazing catches in his career. So congratulations to Kevin Pillar and Kyle Gibson. Hopefully both can enjoy their retirements. And we'll continue on here because we got to talk about the Nationals because they have made a pretty big change here. It was announced that the Nats have fired both Davey Martinez, the manager there, as well as the general manager, Mike Rizzo. So some changes happening in Washington. This season wasn't going to be a season of all the Nats are chasing first place in the division, but they had a lot of young emerging talent, and they should have been somewhere in the mix for a potential wild card spot. That has not gone according to plan. They're 20 games below 500. They're 38 and 58, 17 games back of the division and 14 games back of the wild card. It's clear things have fallen off the rails there. Outside of a few bright spots, including James Wood, who has been the big breakout player for the Nationals. He's been fantastic. So the Nats wanted to make a change here. Of course, Davey Martinez has been with the Nationals as a manager since 2018, where they finished second in the NL East with 82 and 80. And then, of course, in 2019, that was Nat's big year, the big moment for David Martinez in his second year as a manager. Took the Nationals to a 93 and 69 record, still a wild card team, but they brought them to 12 and 5, the only time they got to the postseason under his tenure. And of course, they were the World Series champions that year, an incredible year for the Nationals that year. But since then, it's been a lot of 4th place and 5th place finishes for Martinez. In his tenure, in his 8 years as a Washington Nationals manager, they finished 3.9 in the division. He managed 1,122 games and finished with a 500 wins and 622 losses, about a 44.6 win percentage for him. I mean, he got 500 wins, got a World Series title. I think Nats fans are happy with the David Martinez era. Over the last couple of years, haven't been so great, but that's obviously when they lose Rendon and Turner and Scherzer and Soto and Harper and all these other guys. There's a complete 180 there. But David Martinez, a great manager, great guy. I hope he lands on his feet somewhere and finds a job somewhere with another team and has some moments, because in my mind, he's been a fantastic manager for a Nationals team that hasn't been, super competitive the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens to him. The Nats named Miguel Cairo as the current interim manager right now. So he's been handling things for the Nats going forward here. And, how much worse could it get? Let's see how Dylan Cruz can continue to develop. Let's see how much further James Wood goes. There's still a lot of hope here for the Nationals. Maybe not this year, but next year I think they'll have a quick turnaround and be right back in the mix of things. So we'll have to see how much more this young talent will help the Nats. But for now, they make a manager change, and we'll hope to see some improvements in the second half of the season. I want to talk about a couple of games here from from those 2 weeks I was missing. 2 games in particular. One for the Twins, Byron Buxton was able to hit a cycle. It's a pretty big moment. You don't see that every now and then, so I wanted to give a shout for Byron Buxton. He seems like the type of player that would hit one at some point in his career. We've actually been pretty blessed to see Byron Buxton on the Twins kind of, being the Byron Buxton on the Twins. The Twins have so many players where I feel like when they're right and healthy, they have a fantastic team. That's been the case with the Twins for the last, 4 or 5 years. The problem is they're never able to get their guys healthy. Royce Lewis in particular, but, like Byron Buxton, another one of those guys where 2017, 140 games. That was his best season of his career in terms of games played, with a Gold Glove, and finished 18th in MVP voting. Only one other year in his 11-year career, he's only had 2 years where he's finished, where he's played over 100 games. 140 in 2017, and then 102 last year in 2024. So far this year, he's played 78 games and has a 4.1 WAR. That's the third best in his career. He had 5 WAR in 2017 and had 4.9 in 2021. But again, 4.9 in 61 games. He was on a historic pace before getting hurt. It's his second All-Star was this year. Of course, he was an All-Star in 2022, but then got hurt. Now he's an All-Star in 2025, 78 games, 4.1 WAR. We're looking at, if he can stay healthy, the best season in Buxton's career. He's currently at 21 home runs, 7 away from his career high of 28. So if Buxton can stay healthy, which please, for the baseball gods, let him stay healthy, we're looking at maybe the best season in Buxton's career, where he'll be able to finish over 30 home runs and maybe help the Twins end up in a wild card. I mean, it's going to be really hard for them to track down the Tigers, but Buxton's been incredible, and he hits for the cycle. So good job for Byron Buxton. And then how about Kyle Stowers? Of course, when he was with Baltimore as a prospect, he got traded to Miami, I believe, for getting Trevor Rogers. I think that was last year. Well, he's had a breakout season. He was an all-star. Big moment for him in his career, kind of his breakout year here with the Marlins. They played against Baltimore before the first half ended, and he had himself quite the revenge game. Went 5 for 5 against the team that traded him, with 3 home runs and 6 RBIs. Everybody loves a good revenge game. You get traded, you play that team in the future, and you pop off And that's exactly what Kyle Stowers did. So big game for him, big game for Buxton. Want to, give some flowers to those guys, give a quick shout out mention to them because that's pretty fun stuff to see in our game here. Moving on to some more baseball news. The Yankees DFA'd DJ LeMahieu. The Yankee and LeMahieu era is over, and I cannot say that I'm surprised. LeMahieu has been a non-factor in recent years, and I say non-factor lightly here. He's been around the game for quite some time. Debuted in 2011 with the Cubs. That's right, people forget he was with the Cubs first for that 1 year, before heading over to Colorado where he made a name for himself. 7 years with the Rockies, had 2 All-Stars, had 3 Gold Gloves. He was fantastic. He then goes to the Yankees, had a first year where he was an All-Star, finished 4th in MVP voting, was a Silver Slugger, basically his best offensive year until next year. In 2020, the COVID year, of course, shortened season, but he had a career year there with the stick. Finished 3rd in MVP voting, his 2nd Silver Slugger, but from that year on, his numbers have gotten worse and worse. Hitting-wise, it keeps declining. He's got another Gold Glove there with the Yankees. But this year, in his age 36 season, he's played in 45 games, has 34 hits, a 266 batting average, a 674 OPS, only 2 home runs, 12 RBIs. Really just not pulling his own. Last year, 204 average, a 527 OPS. So last year was still technically worse, but just hasn't been great the last couple of years for LeMahieu here. So the Yankees have decided to cut him loose after 7 years, 14.2 career WAR with the Yankees. In total, he's up to 30.7. LeMahieu's had a fantastic career here, but unfortunately, it looks like it's going to end more on the whimper here. We'll see if a team will take a chance on LeMahieu here. 3-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove, 2-time Silver Slugger, 2-time batting title. So a great career if it is over, but maybe some team will take a chance. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, LeMahieu was DFA'd, and it's floating around in free agency as I speak here. Moving on here, let's talk about the MLB Draft. That happened. Got to give some flowers to our top 5 picks. Always excited here. The Nats took Eli Willits with the 1st overall pick, and then the Angels took Tyler Bremner with the 2nd. It was going down as one of the craziest drafts within the first 2 picks. They went completely off the handles there. We're not going for the talented. We're more going for an interesting guys here. So, people were quite surprised by the first 2 picks, setting up a chaotic and hectic first round. The Mariners, with the 3rd pick, took Cade Anderson, who was, going off of what MLB Network was saying and everything. He seemed like he was the best overall talent to get. He was the expected first round pick. Ended up falling to 3. The Rockies took Ethan Holiday 4th. Loved that. As soon as the Mariners took Cade Anderson, I was sitting there being like, okay, the Rockies have to take Ethan Holiday. If you don't know, Ethan Holiday, brothers of Jackson Holiday, and both of them are sons of Matt Holiday, who, of course, made himself a heck of a baseball career, but spent a lot of time with the Colorado Rockies. So while one of his sons went to Baltimore, he has now his son, Ethan Holiday, who is part of that Rockies organization, an organization that he knows well. So I'm excited to see Ethan Holiday when he eventually gets the call to come up. But he went 4th overall to Rockies. And then the Cardinals took Liam Doyle 5th overall. I can go through a bunch of other picks, but top 5 is usually the ones that I remember kind of right out the gates. Those are the ones that I'm like, okay, I'll bookmark in the prospect system already and see how they do. So hopefully these guys are, able to come up and make some big noise in their career as it begins. But of course, they're going to be in the farm system, is relaxing a little bit. But I love the draft. I love seeing the potential prospect players making, the moves and making the money lines here. So those are your top 5 picks. Obviously, you can go and see the rest, but do love a good draft here. So good stuff overall. So where are we now? Because that's kind of most of the recapping things that I wanted to do. We sit here July 18th, just 2 shy weeks away from the trade deadline. So you're going to see a lot of moves happening here. Love me the trade deadline, and love it when we have some interesting buyers and interesting sellers. I could go into an episode here in the upcoming week or two of some potential players here. But just quickly, I'm excited to I jotted down some players here. Sandy Alcantara, David Bednar, Ryan McMahon, Charlie Morton, Cedric Mullins, Ryan O'Hearn, Emmanuel Clase, Zach Gallen, Marcelo Zuna, Mitch Keller. I mean, I can create a longer list here, but those are some guys I'm expected to get moving, or some very interesting guys who could end up moving here. Class A being one of those really interesting ones. Jaron Duran, another potential guy who have lots of control. So the trade deadline, it is coming. Very excited to see kind of, who's going to move here. But we got 2 weeks here. The stove will kick off. It will be hot. It'll be very fun and exciting to see kind of who ends up where and blah, blah, blah. So that's something to keep an eye out for here as the weeks continue here. So we'll be counting down the days to the trade deadline and get ready for that as the second half of the season begins. Super excited for that. So let's see what else we have to do here. Looking through my list. The June Players of the Month. Didn't get a chance to do that, obviously, and because of time and just I didn't want to kind of just go over and go through all that. But I did get MLB's Players of the Month, so let's give some love and some flowers, some claps for these guys. So this is just MLB. I'm not doing mine for June. It's just too much right now. So what MLB had, the American League Player of the Month, Cal Raleigh, a 300 average, a 1.088 OPS, had 11 home runs, 27 RBIs, just fantastic stuff for him. The NL Player of the Month, Juan Soto, a 3.33 average, 333 there, a 1.196 OPS, 11 home runs, and 20 RBIs. Those two players killed it in the month of June. Pitcher of the month for the AL, that was Hunter Brown from the Astros. 30.1 innings pitched, 30 in the third. Had 39 strikeouts, a 1.19 ERA, and a 0.82 whip. He was fantastic for the Astros. And then for the NL side, it was Zach Wheeler, who was dominant in the month. 31 innings pitched, 42 strikeouts, a 0.58 ERA, and a 0.87 whip. Both pitchers absolutely fantastic. For the Rookie of the Month in the AL, that was Nick Kurtz from the A's. 264 average, a 926 OPS, had 7 home runs, 17 RBIs. Had that series where he had 2 walk-off home runs. He was fantastic. And then for the NL Rookie of the Month, that's Jacob Mizorowski, the kid, the Miz. 16 innings, 19 Ks, a 1.13 ERA, and a 0.63 whip. Fantastic stuff for him. Very excited to see how the rest of his season kicks off, because he could really make a case now, even though he came up late in the year, for the Rookie of the Year for the NL. And then for the AL, it really looks like it's Nick Kurtz versus Jacob Wilson. The A's have 2 rookies kind of fighting for the AL spot there. So excited to see how that will continue out. And then for the Relievers of the Month, Josh Hader won it for the AL. 13.2 innings, a 1.98 ERA, 22 strikeouts, and 9 saves for him and the Astros. While the reliever of the NL, and this one threw me off big time, David Bednar. He's come back from AAA from the Pirates after having an awful start to the season, and he's kind of fixed himself. And in the month of June, he pitched 10 innings, didn't allow a single run, 0 ERA, 16 strikeouts, and 5 saves. He's starting to turn his season around a little bit, so good for him. We'll see which team will trade for him. But those are your Players of the Month from MLB. Again, not having my own, but it is what it is here. So let's continue on here. We've got our stat leaderboard to check out. The first half of the season is done. Who leads in which categories? Aaron Judge still leads in average, 355. He still leads in hits, 125, while it's the big dumper Cal Raleigh finished with 38 home runs. He was almost there, to take over that record for home runs in the first half of the season, but 38, impressive as well. Has 82 RBIs already, which is absolutely just crazy stuff here. Shohei leads in runs still at 91. Soto with walks still 77. Jose Caballero, 31 stolen bases. And then Aaron Judge in OPS, 1.195. For the pitchers, Max Fried and Freddie Peralta joins the list here. They are tied with 11 wins on the season so far. They lead that. Paul Skeens is back as your ERA leader, 2.01. Get this guy some offensive help. Please, Pittsburgh. Please do something with Skeens here. Garrett Crochet still leading the league in strikeouts now, 160 Ks for him. And then in saves, it is Robert Suarez from the Padres, 28 saves. Those are your current stat leaders here as we begin the second half of the season. And I know it is not Monday, but because we've missed so much, we're doing a standings check here as well. So gear up for that. In the AL East, we've mentioned it before, the Blue Jays are in first place now in the East, 55-41. They're 2 games up on the Yankees, who are at 53-43, and then Boston sitting comfortably in third there on a 10-game winning streak currently, 53-45. They're 3 games back of the Jays, 1 game back of the Yankees. Yankees and Red Sox sit currently the 4th and 5th seeds in the wild card and in the postseason there. The Rays, despite struggling hard the last 2 weeks while I was away, they're still 3 games above 500 at 50-47 and 5.5 back for the division, 1.5 back for the wild card. And I know Baltimore started off the year extremely poorly, but in June and kind of going into July, they've played a little bit of a better game here. They're 43-52, 11.5 back of the division, and 7.5 back of the wild card. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Baltimore is still a very talented team with lots of young talent. So keep an eye on them as the second half gets underway here. But we'll have to see kind of how the trade deadline goes. The Central has the biggest lead. The Tigers, 59-38. They're 1 win away from 60 wins. The first team to reach 60 on the season. They're on a 4-game losing streak, though. But they're 11.5 up on the Twins, who are in second place at 47-49, 2 games under 500. Yep, that's right. The Central has gone to shits outside of the Tigers. The Royals are 47-50. The Guardians are 46-49. So those 3 teams there, separated by half a game, essentially. They're all kind of neck and neck. But they're all 4 games, 4.5 out of the wild card. So some work to be done from either of those 3 teams. Guardians have kind of thrown it away with their 10-game losing streak. And, of course, the White Sox at the bottom there, 32-65. In the AL West, the Astros are 56-40. They're 5 games up on the Mariners, who are 51-45. They've looked better of late. They've won 3 straight, looking to chase down the Astros or at least stay in the wild card spot. Again, they have a 1.5 game lead over the Rays for the final wild card spot. Texas looking to join the fight as well. They're at 48-49. They have some difficult questions to ask at the deadline here. 1 game below 500, 3.5 back of the wild card. Angels at 47-49, just a half a game worse than the Rangers. The A's turning around a little bit. They're at 41-57. Good stuff as of late, but of course those earlier big losing streaks have set them at the bottom of the division there, but they can make a case for third if they keep playing at this rate. The NL East, the Phillies are still in first, 55-41. The Mets are 55-42, so it's a half a game lead. The Marlins, they're 44-51. They have passed the Braves, who had a tough 2 weeks, 42-53 for Atlanta. And the Nats, again, 38-58. Managerial change, not fun there. That's how your East shapes up. Your NL Central Cubs, that division lead has been erased. They were 57-39. The Brewers 56-40. It's a 1-game lead. The Brewers on a 7-game winning streak, 8-2 in their last 10. That's going to be a fun race to watch as the season concludes. The Cardinals 51-46. The Reds 50-47. They're 6.5 and 7.5 respectively back of the division. 1.5 and 2.5 games back of the wild card, which again, we've seen some crazier things. There's a lot that could still change here as we get through the second half of the season and the trade deadline that looms. The NL West, the Dodgers are 58-39, 2 games away from 60. They're 3-7 in the last 10, bit of a struggle, but still hold a 5.5 game lead over the Padres, who are 52-44. The Giants are 52-45, half a game difference there between the Padres and the Giants. The D-backs have continued to kind of play just 500 ball, mediocre. They're 47-50. And, could they make a late push? Absolutely. But the trade deadline looms. Will they sell? Will they buy? Not sure there. And the Rockies are at their pace of 22-74. So big yikes there from the Rockies, who, that's just ugly. 22-74. The White Sox 32-65. Basically, what is that? 10-game difference-ish? 10.5, 9.5, whatever. So as a whole, the Tigers are the best team in baseball. 59-38. They have 59 wins. Then you have the Dodgers at 58 wins. The Cubs at 57 wins. Brewers at 56 wins, Astros at 56 wins, and then you have the Phillies at 55 wins, the Mets at 55 wins, the Jays at 55 wins. So those are kind of your best teams in baseball currently. When we look at division leads, Blue Jays to Yankees is a 2-game lead, Astros to Mariners, 5-game lead, Phillies to Mets, half a game lead, Cubs to Brewers, 1-game lead, Dodgers to Padres, 5.5 game lead. So 5 of the 6 divisions are, 6 games or under, close to each other. And then you have the AL Central with the Tigers, an 11.5 game lead over the Twins. That's what the differences look like. For the wild cards, it is currently the Yankees, Red Sox, and Mariners in the AL. And then in the NL, it's the Brewers, the Mets, and the Padres. You have 3 teams that are under 3 games back in the NL. The Giants are half a game out, Cardinals a game and a half out, and the Reds 2.5 out. While on the AL side, there's only 1 team that's under 3 games. That's the Rays, a game and a half out. So a lot can change. You got to choose if you're buying or selling. That's your standings check here. Let's get in to our upcoming series for the week here. Finally, we're back into the swing of things. Then we're starting the second half strong. The Giants are in Toronto to take on the Blue Jays. The O's are going against the Rays. A's at Guardians. Tigers at Rangers, looking for their 60th win. Astros at Mariners. Circle that series. That's the one to watch. 5.5 game lead. Seattle can take a big chunk out of that with a sweep there. Angels at Phillies. Royals at Marlins. Yankees at Braves. Padres at Nats. Reds at Mets. White Sox at Pirates. That's a fun one for last place teams. Red Sox at Cubs, looking to keep their 11-game winning streak going, while the Cubs are looking to avoid the Brewers 1 game back as the Brewers take on the Dodgers. So that's a couple of big series right there. Cardinals at D-backs, 2 teams who are middling out at 500. Someone could take a big sweep here and, get hot. And we end it with the Twins and the Rockies. A good chance for the Twins to start their second half hot as they've got a big 11 and a something gap to go against the Tigers. So a lot can happen, a lot can change, and we'll get into now our playoff predictor here as we kind of finish up the near hour episode here. If the playoffs started today, the Mariners are in your 6th seed, the Blue Jays in the 3 seed, while the Red Sox are in the 5 seed, the Yankees in the 4 seed, and of course, the 2 teams that went on 10-game winning streaks recently would move on. The Blue Jays beat the Mariners, Red Sox beat the Yankees, so the Blue Jays would go up against the Astros in the 2 seed, the Red Sox going up against the Tigers in the 1 seed, and it is the Red Sox and the Blue Jays that beat the Astros and the Tigers. Some upsets there. So you have the 5 seed Red Sox versus the 3 seeded Blue Jays for the American League Championship Series. The Blue Jays beat the Red Sox. They head to the World Series. On the NL side, the Padres are in the 5 seed taking on the Phillies. The Padres are in the 6 seed taking on the Phillies in the 3 seed. The Mets in the 5 seed taking on the Brewers in the 4 seed. The Phillies beat the Padres. The Mets beat the Brewers. So our NLDS matchups are the Phillies versus the Cubs, and then the Mets at the Dodgers. The Cubs beat the Phillies. The Mets upset the Dodgers. So you have an NLCS matchup of the Mets versus the Cubs, and it is the Cubs that move on to the World Series. So our 2025 World Series matchup, the Toronto Blue Jays at the Chicago Cubs, and what do you know it? We're going north of the border. Toronto Blue Jays are your 2025 World Series champions if the season ended today. Ladies and gentlemen, the season does not end today, but this episode does end finally after what will be a near hour episode. A lot talked about in this episode. The big mega series recap, that was a lot of fun, kept it short. Obviously some things were missed, but if you're a big baseball fan, you know what else happened, the big slightly less big storylines to happen here. We're midway of July. We're going to keep going here. 2 weeks for the deadline. We're in the dog days. We're here. Dog days of summer are upon us. We've got the trade deadline that looms. Sooner than you know it, it will be August, and then you get to the division chases, the pennant races, September baseball as we set up for the postseason in October. This is kind of the best part of the season after the All-Star game break. The trade deadline. Okay, we got a little bit of fun shakeup. How these teams will continue to go in these next 2 weeks. These are a big 2 weeks of the season to see who's going to stay hot, who's going to get going here, which teams will buy, which teams will sell. This is a big 2 week stretch for a lot of those teams here that we talked about in the standings. So yeah, big episode. I appreciate you all. I'm glad to be back. I hope you're glad that I'm back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you everybody so much if you sticked around for this whole episode. I appreciate you thoroughly, and I will see you on Monday.